Speaking of doing stuff before it's too late, this was a classic case of never apologizing to the left, right? And in many instances, many people say that Sarah shouldn't have apologized at all, because you could argue that the way she said things were a little bit crass, right? But she's hinting at something, she's getting at something, which a lot of us have noticed, a lot of us are sick and tired of, because we see how much of a part of a more sinister agenda it's playing, particularly in Western nations, particularly in white Western nations. So Sarah Pochin, Reform MP for Runcorn, was on Talk TV recently. And she said a remark that many have now deemed as controversial when a caller called in. And Sarah basically ended up making the remark after caller by the name of Stuart in London, asks the Reform MP if her party will do anything about the representation of demographics in TV adverts. Sarah Pochin chimes back and says, words to the effect of, "It drives me mad seeing adverts full of black and Asian people." Now, this is a much wider conversation, ladies and gentlemen, but here is a little bit of that exchange on Talk TV for you, ladies and gentlemen. Coming up on screen for you now.
A number of my friends think that we're being discriminated like in employment markets because white men are seen as useless and whatever and just invisible. And there's one financial institution which coincidentally uses a strikingly similar image of Nigel in their advertising for an incompetent, useless, arrogant white male. I just wondered if that's something we would look into.
Okay, Stuart, stay where you are. Sarah, what do you think of what Stuart's saying? What would Reform UK do about it, if anything?
I think Stuart's absolutely right. Drives me mad when I see adverts full of black people, full of Asian people, full of, people that basically are anything.
What's wrong with that, Sarah? What's wrong with that?
Well, it doesn't reflect our society, and I feel that your average white person, average white family is like I agree with you, Stuart, not represented anymore in TV.
There are lots of white people on television, Sarah, or they're not. There are lots of white people. There are lots of white men. There are lots of white women.
We're talking about adverts, and how many times do you look at a TV advert and you think there's not a single white person on it? And actually it is. It's something that's happened because, I believe, of the woke liberati that goes on inside, this sort of like in the arty-farty world. When it comes to, northern towns like Runcorn that I represent, it's just not representative of the rest of the country. Might be fine in some.
So, there we go. And that's what got people up in arms, ladies and gentlemen. The fact she said, it drives me mad seeing adverts full of black and people and full of Asian people and all these others. Right? As you can imagine, this stirred up all kinds of things. People saying this is a mask-off moment, all of these things, right? The mask has really fallen, racist with a capital R, all of these things. But what did she actually say that was factually incorrect? What did she actually say that was factually incorrect? Saying it drives you mad if you see adverts full of black and Asian people or whatever. It's her opinion. You can argue that, whatever. But when she said it's not representative of the country, that's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. And we covered this a little while ago of how much overrepresentation there are of these other demographics versus how they actually reflect the population of the UK. It's being designed very sinisterly and deliberately, ladies and gentlemen, to make you think that there's a lot more of these people and that this is a lot more normal than it actually is. To make you think that your ethnic replacement is a lot more normal than it actually is, right? And gets away from the actual crime against humanity that it is. Sadly, it was very sad to see that Sarah then went back and apologised for these remarks. And as you can imagine, ladies and gentlemen, whenever you apologise to the left about this screeching, banshee and crying and all the rest of it, they were not keen to show her any kind of leniency, any kind of, we accept your apology and all of these things. No. I believe it was Wes Streeting. I'll see if I can find the clip the post because I quote tweeted it. Let me see if I can find it. And it was just a perfect case study of why you never apologize to the left. I don't know if I can find it. This is annoying. That's the thing. Listen, the search for specific posts on X is extremely hit and miss. Because sometimes I put in a search term of when I'm looking through people's posts or whatever, and I want to look for a specific thing, and it comes up straight away. Other times I put in the query exactly as it is in the post because I know what exact post I'm looking for, and nothing comes up. Elon, can you do something about that, please? So I said that there was where's his statement here is a perfect example of why you never apologise. And it's because, ladies and gentlemen, they've campaigned on racial representation grounds for years, and we should never let them forget that. I'm going to give you a couple of examples in a moment. Carl Benjamin highlighted many, many examples of this. It's been egregious on the left, and when somebody calls it out, then obviously they get called on manner of things. Because remember, ladies and gentlemen, remember Anna Sawa and Hamza Yusuf lambasting that there were so few, representatives in Scotland, for example, and there were so many white, all of these people that are in positions of power are white, right? You know, that's exactly the way that he was saying it. Scottish people, funny, they're white people, right? It's like the ancient Britons, right? Who we descend from. The native peoples of these isles are of a light skin complexion. That's just the reality. But then what happened was, after Wes Streeting came out and said, fear of racism has come up on the doorstep in the last few months, more in the last few months than in my 15 years in elected politics. I'd argue not because you had many decades of young girls being raped for racial reasons, racial and religious reasons, but predominantly racial reasons. Remember, we're here to fuck all the white girls and fuck the government, ladies and gentlemen. Remember that? We're not going back to 70s and 80s racism if the majority of decent people speak up. This is our fight. It has always been our fight, and we will win. Us directly campaigning against the British people because they're campaigning for the ethnic cleansing that has happened in England, and they want it to be happening everywhere, right? They want the foreign voting bloc, ladies and gentlemen. They don't care about you, right? If you're a native person watching this. But then Sarah then called out Wes Streeting and said, I'm sorry you feel that way. Perhaps you could remind us how strongly you spoke up when this happened. And I'll actually play you the clip that Sarah referenced in this post, ladies and gentlemen. But again, she lost kind of all the authority to speak on these matters when she apologized, ladies and gentlemen. It was very unfortunate. Here we go. Video coming on screen now.
Every chief executive of every council and every government department, white. Every director of a department in Scotland, white. Every principal of a college or university in Scotland, white. Every head teacher in Scotland, white. Every chair of a public sector body...
This is the same scumbag, mind you, when he was questioned on the grooming gangs, chose to deliberately obfuscate and ignore them, tried to run away from the reporters. So no apologies. No stepping back from this. This is the game the left wants to play. All right, let's have it both ways, if anything. So they have it both ways, and we'll show you where you guys are doing the exact same thing. Remember, with the left at the moment, ladies and gentlemen, they are everything that they accuse you of. They accuse you of being a fascist. They've got fascist tendencies themselves, I guarantee you. Everything that they accuse you of, they will also be guilty of. I can guarantee that. And then Wes said, you're right, I didn't share Anas's powerful point about a lack of representative leadership in Scotland. That apology of yours lasted long, didn't it? And again, that's the thing. Should be forever now tainted by that apology, because this is a case of when you give the left, in this instance, an inch, they will take every single fucking mile that they can. Right? They will take every single concession. Because they have to. Because they know that they have no real logical argument. They know that they have no moral high ground to stand on. Right? They've cheered on. They've been the premier cheerers on, right? And I group, the quote-unquote conservatives in with this as well, because the conservatives are just merely liberals, right? They were a liberal party, right? And you can see that Boris Johnson was anything resembling a conservative, right? Contrast Boris Johnson or David Cameron or any of these others, right, with Enoch Powell, for example, right? But they've cheered on all of these initiatives. For example, I was going to bring this up a little bit later, but we'll get on to it in a moment. It was Tony Blair that said in his speech in 1999 to a Labour conference, we have to go to war with the forces of conservatism. I've read this out before. Find this link down below as well, ladies and gentlemen. To be the progressive force, I'm quoting Blair now, to be the progressive force that defeats the forces of conservatism for the 21st century will not be about the battle between capitalism and socialism, but between the forces of progress and the forces of conservatism. They are what hold our nation back, not just in the Conservative Party, but within us, within our nation. The forces that do not understand that creating a new Britain of true equality is no more a betrayal of Britain's history than New Labour is of Labour's values. The old prejudices where foreign means bad, where multiculturalism is not something to celebrate but a left-wing conspiracy to destroy their way of life. The right, the actual right, were correct about everything. It was always a war to destroy British society. Forces of conservatism, that British society, right, grouping all of us together in this, English customs, Scottish customs, Welsh customs that are all slightly different, right, but they all sort of come together because they have very close relation. It's not like where everybody from elsewhere in the world, can just become British or whatever, because that's obviously not true. We have to go to war with the forces that hold the society together. That's what's been done in the name of progress. And this is what it's led to. And it's what it's led to. And they understand. The left are approaching this from fighting a war. They believe that they genuinely believe that they are in a revolution. And that anybody that stands in the way is an obstacle to that. It's why they have no problem resorting to violence and resorting to murder, assassination, terrorism, all of these other things, right? They genuinely believe that they're in a war, right? So it's up to us now whether we fight it or not. And I think in many ways we're still lucky at this point. You've seen a massive tonal shift in America because of what happened with Charlie Kirk. We now have to, again, apply those lessons here as well. You remember, there was a lady in the run-up to the 2024 election that threw a milkshake at Nigel Farage. What would have happened if that milkshake was concrete or acid? Right? They have serious problems. Young Bob was in London, I believe it was, the other day at one of his events, and Antifa, some girls from Antifa threw beans all over him. What if that had been acid? What if that had been a rock? Or a grenade? Could very well have been. I've covered it time and time again, the horrific video of, I believe it's Aaron Danielson, his name was, in Portland, getting shot simply because he was wearing a flag with a T-shirt with an American flag on it, saying that he was a Trump supporter. Remember the video? He says, hey, we got one right here, we got a Trumper right here, bang, bang, dead. That's kind of stuff we're talking about. So what's happening in the UK has been far more insidious in a lot of ways because of how much we've realised, how much we've had the wool pulled over our eyes and how asleep that we've been, right? And now we've just got so much to wake up to. Imagine now trying to be somebody that has to try and come to terms with the reality of how many young girls were raped across generations, right, all the way back to the 50s because of race and religious reasons, right, and how much that problem was worsened. And then the government covered it up, and then police were involved in it, and then every initiative that was put forward by the left was to make this worse. But the whole thing was, and still is, to genocide us as a people. It's genocide by replacement. And then when you point out that you're sick and tired of it, the fact that people who make up about 4% of the population, right, have represented more than 50% of adverts and so on, that it's part of a concerted effort to convince people that it's far more normal than it actually is because you want to push a political agenda. Imagine trying to wake up to that instantly. Unless you already know what's going on, I would imagine that you might be watching this and the tinfoil hat mysteriously appeared on my head. But it's true. But it's true. There's many examples here, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, Carl pointed out that there was many instances of the left and people on the left, supposed successful integration stories that were trying to, again, either push ideology like reparation or lead to greater, quote-unquote, representation. So there's never been proportional representation, ladies and gentlemen. No, it's always been more favourable representation. Preferential representation is what they always wanted. Never wanted equality. Never wanted equality. Otherwise, you'd maybe see these people in 4% of adverts, not 50%. Lenny Henry vows, this is from the Independent, Lenny Henry vows to lead campaign for greater diversity on British television. Mr. Henry, who's been campaigning for 6 years, this is back in 2014, as I said, over a decade. Campaigning for 6 years for better representation of black and ethnic minority people on TV, issued his call to arms as he revealed that he has been having private talks with ministers and senior broadcasting figures to address the issue. In The Guardian, Led at the BBC and other broadcasters, actors and writers call for action over diversity. Idris Elba, Stephen Polyakov and Emma Thompson among those demanding ring-fenced pot of money for BAME programs. You can't even use it in BAME more. How insensitive. Should we tear down every bit of these people's representation because they're now using outdated, antiquated, non-compassionate, is that the word? Not very nice, unempathetic terms that we're not supposed to use anymore according to the inclusive language genocidal against the British guide, right? That the Home Office recently published even. People being punished, yep. But Home Office recently published. We are dismayed at the poor numbers of black, Asian, minority ethnic people, both on our screens and working behind the camera. Today, only 5% of employees in our creative industries are BME. That's perfect representation. How about that? Despite making up about 12.5% of the UK... okay, just specifically black. I got that slightly wrong. Yeah, despite making up about 12.5% of the total UK population. In order to redress this imbalance, we believe that the training, mentoring and development schemes have recently announced, although welcome, are not sufficiently radical to affect significant change. Well, the good news is they went, right, and they've done so well. They've done so well. They now have about 50% representation of just the B of BAME in adverts now, despite them making up 4% of the population. Great effort, guys. Well done. Great effort. Done really, really well. David Lammy says 60% of question time panels are all white. I'm sure that given his performance on Mastermind, he'd love that to change. MP complains to BBC that programme doesn't reflect modern Britain after research shows lack of ethnic diversity in the last 5 years. Labour MP David Lammy has filed a complaint with BBC over the lack of ethnic diversity among question time panellists, providing research claiming that more than 60% of shows in the last 5 years had no figures from a black, Asian or ethnic minority background. If everybody on there is the best person for the job, why would that matter? First off, but again, you're seeing here, ladies and gentlemen, they're going on Sir Pochin now for highlighting and being tired of the over-racial representation for politicized reasons, right? Being tired of the game that the left is playing and highlighting it in a not particularly, PC way in terms of the words that she chose to use, which is absolutely fine. She can use whatever word she wants. She didn't swear. She didn't use any racial epithets, right? But it's part of a concerted effort. That's why they don't like it. They don't like that, again, they now hypocrisy so much, really, I suppose, is being exposed. I don't know if you can really say it's hypocrisy, but again, that they focus on racial representation for the last 10 years plus, right? And people are saying, well, no, I'm sick and tired of it. Racism, all this and all that. It makes you wonder why, again, they try and decry all of this stuff because they can't contend with the actual ideas, that people aren't scared of being called racist anymore. People aren't scared of being called fascist anymore because they understand that the target is on their back even if they are not those things. Because they use those labels if you don't go along with specific party orthodoxy, as you know. If you are not part of the hyper woke, SW1, liberal clique mafia, then you are basically akin to Hitler. Even if you're just, a moderate conservative like Charlie Kirk was. So the target is on your back whether you like it or not, ladies and gentlemen. And the ideological war is here, and you're in it whether you like it or not. There's still time to choose the right side. Ed Vasey, much more to do on diversity in TV. Culture Minister at the time said that more needs to be done to build on plans announced by broadcasters as Pat Younger backs Lenny Henry's call for ring-fenced funding. I believe, by the way, wasn't it Lenny Henry that recently called for billions in reparations again? Supposedly an integration success story. Now he's trying to already fleeced people, mind you, for things that they've already paid for debts that we've already paid. Our supposed integration success stories. Don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, we got a lot more coming up of the integration success stories. Don't you worry. But you're seeing here, ladies and gentlemen, these articles. 20th of April, 2014. Where was this one? 20th of August, 2014. 2nd of December, 2015. 28th of August, 2015. This is all under the Conservatives. So what does that tell you? What does that tell you? And many of them really seem to have changed their spots. Like leopards, they never really change their spots. If they really seem to change, no. If they had really changed, they wouldn't have gone with the leadership figure that they did. But as I mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, this is very, very sinister indeed. Now, I want you to think about this, ladies and gentlemen. Have a think. Would they play a video like this for Pakistani Muslims who have a massive, and all other places around in Asia and in the Middle East and so on, and the Far East, where inbreeding is massive problems. And now all of a sudden we've decided that we need to import more of that. We need to have specific wards on the NHS dedicated to dealing with female genital mutilation and inbreeding. And now the government hold a motion recently that I believe was they won't even ban first cousin marriages as to not upset Muslims, right? Imagine, would they play a video like this for that demographic? Would they play a video showing two of their native people making out, right, male and female, making out, and then have a geneticist expert come in to explain that, oh, you want to be careful of inbreeding and that you should be breeding with more exotic partners from around the world to improve your resistance to disease and so on. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, it is a very sinister, very blatant anti-white agenda that's going on here, anti-European, anti-Western, anti-white agenda going on, right? When they show it like this. Video coming on screen now.
Det er vildt, hvad vi kan læse ud af DNA'et fra gamle tænder og gamle afføring. Altså, de første mennesker i Grønland, de uddøde på grund af en arm. DNA'et i den her lille fætter har vist os, at vi danskere har overlevet, fordi vi har knaldet med andre folkeslag fra Mellemøsten og Vestasien. Og det har gjort os mere resistent over for sygdommene. Så hvis vi ikke blander os med fremmede, så uddør vi. Så hvis I skal give jeres kommende børn de bedste muligheder, så skal I nok vælge noget lidt mere eksotisk.
Det er to, hvis du synes evolutionsbiologi er lidt hyggeligt.
So apologies that the video was quite quiet, ladies and gentlemen. It's just a naturally quiet video. But obviously that was in Danish. That was in Danish. But it is a propaganda piece telling Danes to have kids with non-whites. Right? And again, I don't want to sound right, because I don't believe that there's anything inherently wrong. Right? If two people from, different areas of the world meet in a place, whether they've come there to meet or not, if they happen to meet and sparks fly and things go from one step to another and whatever else, that's for people to make up their own thing, right? But you can see here, this is state TV. This is state TV in what appears to be Norway that are pushing anti-native propaganda, if you will, because this is what the actual spoken words were. I've got it here because I asked. This is a Grok translation, so if you happen to be able to speak the language and you want to leave the translation down below for me, if I get anything wrong, then please do. This is the best that I can do at the moment. So the monologue is primarily a monologue from a geneticist character. It is wild, quote, "It is wild how much you can learn from old teeth and old stool. The first people on Greenland died out because of inbreeding. The DNA in this little ball has shown us that us Danes have survived because we have mated with other peoples from the Middle East and West Asia. That has made us more resistant against disease. So if we do not mix with foreign people, then we will die out. So if you want to give your future child the best prospects, then you should pick someone a little more exotic." And the text that appears on the end, Grok is translated to, "If you think evolutionary biology is a bit cozy, ... and then appearing to be a teaser for part 2. If anything in that is wrong, ladies and gentlemen, if you happen to speak the language, please do let me know. This is the best I have to go off of. I don't have a translator here. I don't have a production team. Don't have a mission control or anything like that. So it's the best that I can go off of. So would they play this for, other people around the world where inbreeding is a massive problem, is leading to massive other things? Would they say to the Pakistanis and the Afghanis and all of the other things, oh, you need to go mate with the whites, right? By the fact that obviously they do that anyway, they want to do that anyway and fuck the government whilst they do so. But no. This is just a part of a big anti-white conspiracy. And in fact, I want to see if I can bring something up, because he's saying here that apparently basically being part of your own community harms your immunity. Let me bring something up, which I think would be quite interesting. It's not specifically related, ladies and gentlemen, to what we're talking about, but I think it's quite interesting. Michael Knowles done a very interesting sit-down with a vaccine expert, if I'm correct in saying. Let me see if I can find it. It's very, very important, as I'll show you now. There we go. Because there's a specific graph which I want to show on screen, which I think is very, very important. Right. I'm going to pause it whilst I see if I can find it, ladies and gentlemen. You just see this is a slight jump cut. Right, okay. This is the thing that I wanted to bring up, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's extremely important, and I'll probably play a section of the interview now for you as well. It's a tremendous interview with Dr. Andy Wakefield. In fact, I will just play this from the start of this chapter. Where is it? Here we go. I'll play it from the start of this chapter. I think it's particularly important. He shows a graph, right? He gives Michael a graph which shows measles mortality over time. And it's in the context of vaccines, right? It's in the context of immunization onset. I think this is very, very important to look at because it shows something which would, in theory, also go against what the quote-unquote geneticist is saying, which is basically herd immunity, right? Because what you see is measles, before proper immunization protocols, I believe, have today begun, right? You had massive drop-off in terms of measles mortality this is from England and Wales. This is from England and Wales, right? It goes back, I believe, as far as like the very early 1900s, potentially even to the late 1800s, as far as I know, to the onset of the records. But this is the this is the part of the interview that I wanted to show you, ladies and gentlemen. I'll play it for you now, and then we'll come back after you've seen that graph, and I'll pause it on the graph as well so we can really see it. There we go.
But this is a graph of measles mortality over the last 150 years. This is the UK, but the US is exactly the same.
Yeah.
So what you can see, these are the deaths per million children affected, okay? And what you can see is that measles, up until the 1920s, was a major killer. 120 per million children getting the measles. After 1920, it plummeted dramatically till it approached 0 deaths. Measles was still prevalent, but it was becoming a dramatically milder and milder disease. They will never show you this. Now, the source for this is Thomas McCowan's Modern Rise of Population, if anyone wants to look that up. Now, the question here is, what would have happened if we'd never intervened with vaccination? You can see that vaccines had nothing to do with this.
Right, because there's a little little dot here. Immunization began. So it's already collapsed
by 99.96%. What would have happened, here's the first scientific question, if we had never intervened with a vaccine?
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, you hear that there. As I mentioned, it's in the context of vaccines, in the context of measles mortality in children. I believe he said it was per million or per 100 million. I can't remember exactly what the unit he said was. Just have a look at this on screen, though, ladies and gentlemen. This is the section. I'll bring it up in the studio, my pseudo studio. So you're seeing here, measles mortality under 16 years old in England and Wales. You can see there, it goes back to 1850. So 1850 up until the time of about 1920, massive killer. And then from that point onwards, it falls precipitously. It actually falls precipitously. By the time you get, if I bring this forward just a little bit, give me 2 seconds. If I bring this forward just a little bit so you can see the next bit, just find the right section. There we go. So all up until about 1970, when immunization began, so you can see here, it falls massively precipitously through the 20s, through the 40s, through the 50s. and resulted in a lot less deaths. And that's when really the big immunization protocols begun. And it's part of a wider discussion on immunization protocols, ladies and gentlemen, because there's a reason they push through all of the same ones at the same time, despite the fact that they conflict with each other. I'll leave this interview down below, ladies and gentlemen. You really need to go and watch it. I would strongly advise it. But you've got to take into account, ladies and gentlemen, throughout this time, from 1920, we live in the era of mass migration now. And this has been something that's a very new phenomenon, this mass migration, in many instances, this mass ethnic replacement, right? So if that's the case, that we need to breed with people all around the world to get immunity and whatever else and boost our resistance, surely in a very ethnically homogenous society like England and Wales, which they were at the time, Wales still is, right? England, obviously, up until very, very recently. You only got to go back to the 60s to be basically in a complete ethno-state, right? A complete ethno-state. It is like less than 0.1% ethnic minority. Where's the lack of immunity? Where's the lack of immunity? And this is obviously coupling with different advances in medical technology and stuff like that. But you can't even say that it's because of any sort of immunization stuff, particularly with regards to measles, for example. But if part of our argument here is that we need to mate from everybody else around the world, not with our own people, specifically in our countries, mind you, not in anywhere else like Pakistan or whatever. In our countries, right, we can't mate with our own people because that would leave us compromised to disease. Surely we would have seen that. Surely we would have seen that, but it seems that we're doing quite well. Makes you think that, oh, maybe it's part of an anti-white, anti-European, anti-British, anti-Western propaganda drive. Makes you think that these quote-unquote expert geneticists might not be who they say they are. Makes you think, doesn't it? So be wary, ladies and gentlemen, when you see people like Sarah there, and sadly going back and apologising because she was completely right, and it just goes to show that, again, the backbone from reform seems to be sorely missing. Right? Never go and apologise, because you'll never get anything from it, and it will be continued to be held over your head for the rest of your life anyway. Never apologise. And B, maybe don't take what these expert geneticists have to say across state TV propaganda programmes on face value. Maybe understand that being one with your own people is actually okay, and it's probably going to be better than what a lot of these quote-unquote experts say. If you enjoyed that clip, then make sure to go on over to the Voice of the Valleys X page at VOT_Valleys on X. We're also on Instagram at Voice of the Valleys. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, comment, all of that good stuff. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again soon. Godspeed.